Webinar is now streaming live on YouTube.
Yes, floor is yours, dear Israel.
Thank you. Hola from Mexico. Buenos dias, good morning, and good afternoon and good evening to other members of the audience, as well as members of the panel, which I would like to welcome. Also, Ramadan Mubarak to those of you who are in the Ramadan month that has initiated and initiating also in other countries today. I hope we all are well on health and other issues with family and environment. So welcome, and it is going to be a fantastic panel. We're going to try to keep it quite lively, so we don't send whatever is nighttime, we don't send anybody to sleep, and whatever is early time, we make sure that we wake you up. Whatever is afternoon, make sure you grab your coffee, you're here with us. We're going to have the session is going to be initially a conversation and question between myself and my dear panelists. We will then move on to a Q&A by the audience, so be ready and preparing your questions. We will also love you to watch us on, we are live on YouTube as well. If you click on the top left-hand side of your screen, you will be able to share that link as well. And please also distribute this recorded webinar once it's made published. I think we will have a lot of valuable content, and follow our social media accounts as well for the panelists and for WBAF. For those of you that have joined us on our first, or it's your first time with us in WBAF, this is a series of webinars that have been created by the World Business Angel Investment Forum with the objective of sharing the knowledge, the expertise, also exchange views of how different countries, different industries, different personalities, different governments are dealing with what it is now a pandemic around the world. We're all living on different scenarios. We got our own challenge, but it is also comforting to see that the challenges are shared around the world in different countries, and that we can take best practices as well as better advice that you could also take with you, take it out there online and share it with others, and also apply it to whichever industry or stage of investment or startup you are. We're going to start, and the title of this webinar and discussion panel is the post-pandemic business environment for startup, angel investors, and venture capital. And you know that the context of the panel is that none of us can predict the future. We don't know where we are going to be. And I will say very quickly that none of us can predict the future pretty much all of the time, but we did have some idea of how the future was going to be previous to coronavirus. We, as investors, angel investors, VCs, we love planning, we love creating scenarios every time we evaluate a startup, an entrepreneur, and we think we know how the future is going to pan out, because we pretty much look at the history for the past 10 years and we think the industry is not going to change. Was big surprise, the industries, the environment, the world has changed today. And today, more than ever, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 months, in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months. So with that in mind, we'll immediately go on to my dear members of the panel to introduce themselves. I'll be calling each one of them. They'll be spending 2 to 3 minutes to explain to you who they are, and then we will go to the real questions and the discussion that we have in place for you today. So please welcome Lucy Chow. Please introduce yourself to our audience. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Israel. Ramadan Kareem to anyone that's celebrating right now. I'm based in Dubai. So I'm the director of the Women's Angel Investor Network. And what that means is that we are an angel network which has all female angels, and we also invest in companies that have at least one female founder. So I'll talk a little bit more about having that sort of a lens and the implications for funding going forward. I'm also very pleased to be part of the executive committee with the WBAF fund, and I'm an angel in various other networks in the US, Next Wave and the Founders Network. Maybe I'll leave that for now.
Thank you, Lucy. Fabrice, please.
Yes, so I'm a senator at WBAF for Luxembourg. I have a background mainly as a tech entrepreneur. I co-founded different companies and in different sectors, mainly space and digital transformation. As a business angel, I have invested in space, artificial intelligence. I was a former board member of the Luxembourg Business Angel Network. I'm currently the chairman of IBAN Space, which is the dedicated vertical of IBAN, the European Business Angel Network for space. And I'm also the co-chairman of the Luxembourg Space Tech Angels Group, which is a local association in Luxembourg, trying to aggregate as many business angels to invest into space. So that's it for now.
Thank you, Fabrice. Nikhil, please.
Namaste, everyone. This is the new way of greeting from India. We don't shake hands anymore. I am currently based in near a town called Kanpur near New Delhi. I'm the CEO for the largest technology incubator in India. You can say is a Y Combinator for India. We have 75 companies today working on various technologies, and for the last 8 weeks, many of our companies are working new solutions and ideas to fight COVID, including creation of ventilators, development of disinfectant zones, development of new reusable PPE kits, N95 mask. So there is a lot of research and activities going, not only in the research side, but also in the startup space. During this seminar, I will share some of the insights, what is going on and where the investment is coming in. Thank you.
Mohammed, please.
Yeah, this is Mohammed. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm a founder of One Global. It's a digital transformation company, and other companies that are in the space as well, but in the fintech. So you have multiple startups and well-established companies in digital financial inclusion, in digital tourism, in digital healthcare, and digital entertainment. I'm currently involved in 2 more ventures in digital financial services for the capital market. So we are disrupting the capital market and tokenizing all the assets to become digital assets. This is a new way forward for the future of the capital market and asset management. And another company that is more into the B2B and how to expedite the digital transformation for B2B in the States. So I'm a board member in many companies, and I'm the higher commissioner for WBAF for Kuwait. I'm a member in the global chamber and advisor to the board. And looking forward to discuss this exciting post-pandemic with Israel, the new future and the new world that would be after this COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. And precisely, just taking the words from Mohammed, is we should stop thinking that we're going back to normal after the pandemic is over, because we are going into a new world. Everything is changing, everything. And what we know now of the present crisis, which is a crisis, is that restaurants have shut down. A lot of services industry has suffered quite badly. We know, and we speak to everybody that we speak to, the first thing that happens is precisely this. There's a lot of exchange onto how bad is it with you? How terrible it is what we're living right now. How many people, unfortunately, has passed. And that it also creates a little bit of a downside onto our well-being. You know, we start thinking negatively. And I think those challenges, you can also kind of put them away. So I'd like to start with the first of the questions that I'm gonna ask each one of you to answer. It is very much, we want you to tell us, what are you living locally in the country where you are right now? What is the environment within the early stage investment? What are the challenges? We will go into more specific terms, but we need to know from other countries in the world what is happening within your own country with regards to the early stage investment industry. Please, Lucy.
You know, we have a really interesting ecosystem in MENA, and I know Mohammed will be able to add more color when he speaks, but I'll just talk briefly about the impact to funding in Q1. You know, there's a belief that there's not enough funders in MENA. In actuality, we have over 100 VCs, angel networks, and so forth. It's just that, you know, we're a very nascent ecosystem. And, you know, it's interesting in terms of the actual investor profile. So if you're looking at Silicon Valley and some of the more developed regions, a lot of investors are ex-entrepreneurs that did and exited very well and have now started investing back into this space. But here, typically the investors are high net worth individuals. Now, that's not a bad thing, because I think money from anyone to help in the startup space is important. So it's interesting that in Q1, 5 companies accounted for a little bit over 65% of all funding that occurred in the region. And specifically the sectors, one is a cloud kitchen. The other is a ride sharing app coming out of Egypt. And another it's called Sell Any Car. So it's a car selling platform. So it gives you an idea of what we've been looking at, or what's been of interest to investors in the funding space. And some of those companies I just mentioned, obviously they're in sectors that should do well going forward, and should do well because of COVID, unfortunately. Now, one thing I just wanted to also mention, and I would love thoughts from you know my colleagues on this webinar. You know, it's unfortunate, but when it's times like this, you know, early stage seed funding goes down rapidly. And I think I saw a statistic that said, I think it's 80% down quarter on quarter in the US. So I would assume that that's pretty typical of most regions. But the heartening thing is that when you come out of a crisis, it's also the first stage to recover, and it recovers quite quickly. So I think, you know, it's pretty tough right now for startups. You know, the ones that were looking for funding or maybe were close to closing, that's a lot has been put on hold. And I would like to talk later on a bit more about what investors should be doing with their current portfolio. So just
that'd be great. We will go into more details and get great tips for investors. So at least to have a scenario where they are. Fabrice, how is the situation with you, and how is the early stage investment scene space moving where you normally invest right now?
Yes, so in Luxembourg, they adopted a lot of measures to help companies, not specifically startup, but mainly companies. Unfortunately, for example, for the startup, there was one thing that was a bit complicated for startup because they ask that the company has minimum 15,000 turnover to receive the help, which for some very early stage startup, it may be complicated if they are still in the phase there where they don't generate revenues. So in order to, let's say, measure that, the government, and hopefully in Luxembourg, they react quite fast. They launch a COVID-19 competition, which is now, I think the applications will be now in April, and it will be quite quick. It will be on 6 months in order to start up offering innovative solution to fight, let's say, the COVID. Can be in health, it can be economic, things, etc. And the startup will receive 150,000 euro. So they will have 30 grant like this. So it's a 3 million that they put on the table, which is nice. Actually, normally there is an acceleration program where I'm a mentor inside the program, and the spring edition was canceled because it's not feasible because of the COVID situation. So they replaced with this competition. So I think it's a very nice idea. In terms of investors, for example, the business angel, the Luxembourg Business Angel Network is still active. They are doing virtual pitching sessions instead of physical ones. Apparently it works. So they are still, let's say, continuing. Of course, as we will talk probably later, generally speaking, all investments, all fundraising are slower, but it may still happen. In terms of the startups in Luxembourg, what I see is that many of them, they try to repurpose. So trying to maybe focus on some different markets. So for example, if they were B2B, they see if they cannot, let's say, serve some B2C markets, or redeploying their competencies. So sometimes for their the market they were initially focused, maybe they cannot deploy their competencies, but maybe there are some markets now that are in need and they can redeploy their forces there. So this is very interesting. So again, as an entrepreneur, I think you must be flexible. And I see this in some startups in Luxembourg. As probably you know, Luxembourg is the second place for funds worldwide. And what I see is that the private equity firms is mostly the private equity firms, so less, and the family offices, less the VC probably, but they are looking at more, let's say, sustainable projects. So I think the COVID-19 is also probably making some, in some way people are thinking differently and see that, there are some big problems to be solved apart, let's say, health problems like climate change. And so private equity firms are also now trying to invest more into that. And for example, in Luxembourg, they have the Luxembourg Stock Exchange. They are quite a worldwide leader in green bonds. And we see more and more companies that are trying to raise funds thanks to listing green bonds. So there are some interesting developments. Of course, the situation is complicated for everyone, but the country is small, so the reactivity is quite high.
Great. Thank you. Nikhil, India, please.
So I agree what Lucy and Fabrice has said. So I will not repeat what is happening in India. Of course, there is a challenges regarding the typical angel investment which goes on, which is like on e-commerce or artificial intelligence or machine learning. But there are new areas, avenues which are emerging. I would say if the startups who are looking for some new opportunities, that's a great time to do those. So I will divide the opportunities into two parts. The one is lives and another is livelihood. Startups, what we have seen in the last few weeks, which has focusing on the lives, saving the lives, whether it's related to the COVID or related to any other aspects of it, they have started quite significant amount of funding. Today, there was a webinar which I was listening in the morning, where some of the most prominent venture capitalists of India who were there, and they said that by the end of the year, we may see few unicorns emerging out of health tech space. And they're not just talking about pure play health tech, but a related health tech. But at the same time, what we have seen because of the lockdown, the kind of new models in e-commerce and delivery and app-based mechanisms which are emerging for delivering the livelihood-related products, or delivering the what is the required to maintain the livelihood for the people. So livelihood is not only on focusing on the poorest of the poor who don't have access to the goods and services, but also the livelihood for the middle class, for the upper middle class, even for the other classes. That is also quite important because they don't have access to the daily services. So they require new solutions for this. And all the solutions which are there of delivery, they all gone bust. So you will see in my opinion, there will be a lot of realignment happening from Amazons and Ubers of the world. That will happen in the future. But at the same time, there will be a great disruption happening at the ground up level. New startups which were waiting on the fringe will come up and will utilize this opportunity. And in the last few weeks, in the beginning, I have mentioned that many of the companies which we are incubating are eligible to raise funds. Millions of dollars being pumped into by VC community. There is a fund in India which is called ACT Fund, where $10 million has been committed by venture capitalists, which are global venture capitalists like Excel Partner, Matrix Partners, which are investors in Facebook and some of the bigger companies. They are investing $10 million in finding solutions, and they are not limited only to COVID-related solutions. They are going much beyond that. So certainly, entrepreneurs are positive lookers. We cannot just sit back and cry. So we have to laugh in every situation. So I would look at this one as a watershed movement for angel investors, as well as the new innovators who are thinking out of the box. And there's an opportunity which exists if we are able to focus on what the people need at this stage, and the whole world will change in next 6 months time, a year's time, 2 years time, we don't know. At that time, we require new models, new ideas to emerge.
Great. Thank you, Nikhil. And I think we will come back very swiftly to this great cash and capital that seems to exist everywhere. But I'm actually quite hard to find other angel investors that are saying, yeah, let's go and invest. And there are millions of dollars available. And also venture capitals that some of us take part in. I don't think that the liquidity is the issue. I think that writing the check is the issue. So Mohammed, please Kuwait and what environment you are looking at. Your microphone is not on. Okay. In Kuwait, the situation wouldn't be different from any other places. It's been split between two parts, two situations. All the apps and the digital platforms, online platforms, been doing well. Actually, they get in stress and they are growing. Most of the restaurants moved into own delivery services. So we have a curfew, partial curfew, and also we have a complete lockdown for the entire country. So services been mainly happening on demand. So that kind of sector and that kind of startups, they get a lot of stress and pressure to grow more. And the other parties where they've been closed out, like the beauty sectors and gymnasiums and all that kind of sectors that require physical presence inside the facility, those are suffering and they are facing problems with their major two factors in the OPEX, which is the salaries and the rent.
So, but what is happening inside the government, they have done a lot of stimulus. So these stimulus is majorly is going to be forwarded and directed into the rents and salaries for the upcoming 6 months. Also, the loans inside the banks being deferred to 6 months. So lots of activities trying to reduce the effect and the impact on the ecosystem. We are not like other areas where we have lots of funds that is are currently working and funding. But what is happening is that there are shifts. There is an interesting shift happening. Like one of the gymnasiums started to make all the exercises online, and they open all their activities that they've been doing physically to be done from home, and you make the camera on, and they can make monitoring on the activities that you are doing, it's right or not. We see the schools, all private schools went online. So it's a complete transformation that used to be an alternative. Now it is the primary. And this is what we will see later on the new after COVID-19 era. For me, I'm a believer on the future that is going to be completely digital. Not only digital, it's going to be decentralized. Lots and lots of changing are coming, lots and lots of disruption is coming. You see today, nobody's touching the cash, especially in our country, nobody touching the cash. Everything happening via card, using payment gateways, payment links. So this is encouraging the CBDC, which is the central bank digital currencies. And that by itself, it's another era of investment and exciting investment, because it's touching the economy, it's touching the money itself. So we are looking forward into that, keeping investing on our current startups. There is a recent startup that prior COVID-19 by 1 month, I was involved in. So, but I was struggling to take a decision, continue, stop, continue, stop. Then because it has in its heart, it has the digital part, digital distribution and digital supply chain. So I committed, and I'm continuing funding them. So this is the way that it would be. It depends on the angel investor himself. It's risk taking, but at the same time, you need to, as Nikhil said, you have to be positive. You cannot sit and cry and say that what will happen, I will collapse, or my money will finish spending it while I'm locked down at home. No, I believe this is the time now for a lot of opportunities. Angel investors this is the time for you guys. This is the right time, because it's a smart money, what all those startups are looking for. It's not only the money. You can do restructuring for them. You can do deals with the customers, the clients that have been buying from them. So you can do convertible notes. You can do a lot of activities that can sustain the startups. The startups are an important layer inside the economy. Big guys is different than the bottom guys. Startups are coming in the middle. So I believe that we should look positively into that, and as much as we can, we hunt opportunities. Especially that would be the future more into biotech. So lots and lots of investments going to be poured into the biotech, healthcare. Healthcare, what I meant by healthcare is the telemedicine, teledentist, prescriptions.
And I think we will go into the industries in a minute,
okay.
Mohammed, and we'll come back to that. That'd be great. What I would like to take the next question to the panel onto is, look, we all angel investors, we all have our portfolios, but there's a fact. I mean, NASDAQ did a research, and it's saying that that research of angel investors and VCs, 38% of them said that they will hold all their investments during the coronavirus, i.e. the portfolio will stop, the new investments. 28% of them are actually reevaluating their commitments as a form of measuring what's going to happen with a portfolio. 43% they say they will be investing differently after coronavirus. Different strategies, different conditions, different everything. And now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of what this panel is all about. So you as angel investors, you are members of VCs. What is your strategy right now of your portfolio? How are you managing your portfolio? You're gonna have some casualties. That's a given. Please be quite straight with it. How much of your portfolio you think is not gonna survive this? Because that's a portfolio evaluation that we as angel investors are doing all the time. We know we have mortality rates on the normal scenarios around the world. We know that 70% of the investments on angel investments don't make it onto the next stage. That's on the normal circumstances. So and we know that the VC's mortality rate is up to 35% of their portfolio. So taking that into account on the normal situations, how are you doing with your portfolio? What are your strategies? What can you share with the audience that have investments and angel investors and VC fund managers? Lucy, please.
So let me tell you a bit about our structure in one mini VC that I'm part of. So, not only is it hard, I agree with you, Israel. I don't, the money is sitting on the sidelines. I think we have to work hard to find it because people are realistically keeping the money aside. So if we are using our dry powder, we're keeping it to the side to help our existing portfolio. And I think that's not an unusual strategy for a lot of angels and VCs right now. If there's any time that we need to be pretty hands-on with our portfolio companies, it's right now. And the other thing is, and if you're an angel network or a VC that happens to yourself be looking for funding, that's a problem. So there's a knock-on effect, right? So we're finding that there's an issue with, us raising, right, as a VC, as an angel network, and so we're saying we're gonna have to push out our deadlines for maybe a good year, and that might be something specific to this region. But anyway, so that's giving you some insight there. And again, we'll just focus right now on our existing portfolio, and we're going to double down in terms of if we need to provide a bridge loan. That's very, very common right now. That's being asked because of all the cash flow issues, and we're just being much more hands-on to help companies if they need to be. We're almost part of the management team right now with a lot of our portfolio companies. And I'm hoping this is where the whole smart money aspect is really paying off for our founders. I think I'll wait till the next question to talk about specific sectors. Did you want to talk about that now, or?
No, let's move on to this one, and because we have various questions from our that I have listed for our panel, and we are against time. So Fabrice, what's your strategy right now with your portfolio specifically?
Yes, so I think, I see many investors putting on hold, let's say, new investments. I don't think that it's the right strategy, and I agree with Mohamed that it's probably the time to invest. It's like the stock market. The stock market is quite also low, and we know that it's also a good strategy to buy probably cheap stocks, and probably there are some quite good opportunities. But I understand that we will speak later about this. Now, regarding the existing portfolio, I think that first of all, what is important is to help, let's say, the founders, that they take care of their employees and customers. I think that's the first thing probably to do. Then, in terms of, let's say, financial assessments of the situation. I see three different situations. The first one is maybe the company was already suffering pre-COVID, and then perhaps COVID is just going to kill the company. And in that case, yeah, if the company is not able, as I mentioned earlier, to repurpose or to redeploy, then probably we should already consider winding the company down. That's the brutal reality, but it is what it is. Now, is the company healthy enough, but might be in need of cash at short term because simply during months they had no customers and no turnover? Then it's our responsibility, in my opinion, to help them to survive, and maybe either we can deploy ourselves the funds, or maybe like networks, local networks, or like a network like the WBAF, maybe we can find other investors to help step in, and then that the company can survive. Anyway, in that situation, what I would recommend is to help the founders to minimize their cash burn. Maybe they have to stop or delaying some recruitment, some non-necessary expenses, some travels, investments, etc. So yeah, it's maybe not the ideal situation, but at least they can survive and, let's say, pass through the crisis. And finally, there are some companies that maybe they did recently some funding round, and maybe they have enough, let's say, they had quite good revenues and they have cash reserves, and maybe they have a runway of 18-24 months. Then these are, of course, the companies that are in the best situation, and they can probably wait until, let's say, the conditions are more favorable for the next round. So in my opinion, I think that's a good approach for investors, is to look into these three cases.
Great, thank you. So Nikhil, and knowing that Lucy and Fabrice have mentioned restructure your portfolio, Fabrice has mentioned of course you have to take hard decisions because as we know, cash doesn't grow on the trees, and we also know as well that you can't put good money after bad money. So the decisions of angel investors have to be harsher now than before. Probably a little bit less of angel and more of an investor hat. Not because there's no smart money, but it is smart is still there. But the realities are those. So countries have cut back. We're going into global recession. That's the reality of it. How is the portfolio that you see of the angel investors in India that is gonna, how are you gonna manage it, and what are the tips that you can give in order to better manage your portfolio right now? Never mind about new investments. We'll talk about that later. But the present portfolio, how would you have the best out of it so you don't have a crash on your own portfolio?
So certainly it's a very tricky situation currently, as already the other panelists have said. There is no recipe to look at that what will succeed and what not. So, but there are certain clear emerging areas that are there. If you feel you have to speak to the founders, you have to speak to the team members. How confident are they of their business? Are they struggling for survival? It is better to, if they are struggling for survival, then the conversation has to be in a different way. But if they are sounding positive, and if they are looking that they can make out once the lockdown is over, lockdown is not going to be there forever. The businesses have already started preparing for post-lockdown situation, whatever it is. I'm not talking about the second wave or third wave of COVID coming in and new viruses coming in or old viruses going down. I'm not talking about it. But lockdown is not going to stay. That is quite clear. The life has to go on. It is a hard decision, but at the same time, the realignment has started happening. So the companies the founders which are able to and willing to realign to the new situation, they're the investors who should put more money. And they should give them a stick to survive. But the companies are not willing to. They are like some high-headed founders, and they say, no, we will stick to whatever we're doing. Like, it's like a clinging to your own baby. You are not able to get away. You always cry on the lost love. That's what is being said. So who are stuck up in their own situation, who are stuck up in their own technology, and they are in the love of their own startup without thinking about the realignment. That's what my advice to investors is, that they have to take hard decisions, because it's an unprecedented situation, require unprecedented steps. It is not a business as usual situation. So realignment has to happen, and that is only possible when the investors take up an executive role in a company for a few weeks to participate and discuss with them what's going on. And there are, I know that this question you are going to ask, but I will certainly answer in the next round. There are people who are sitting on the fence. There is enough money still in the market, because the old avenues are stopped completely. The real estate is gone. The other investment, like luxury investment, markets are in yo-yo. So the situation is quite bad for the people who are already sitting on the money, and they are not able to multiply. So startups are the future for the future investment. I will take it up more detail in the next round.
Great. Mohammed, so we are looking at more controls maybe for our portfolio, more involvement to come into it, i.e. Be more smart with your portfolio. You and I have had plenty of conversations where we have spoken even about putting in a CFO every time you make an investment on a startup, on a scale up, because looking at how the money is being used has always been an issue with the startups. We know that. We are angel investors, and we know that our portfolio has issues with KPIs reporting and the bank statements and how much cash flow there is and how it's being used. So now more than ever, knowing exactly what's in the bank account of our portfolios of our startups is relevant. How are you managing your portfolio, and what tips have you got for us?
Actually, I wouldn't go far from what Fabrice said, that you will look into the portfolio and see which companies are already struggling before COVID-19, and you've been trying to give them their last what they call it, last breath to survive. Those companies, I believe, you should shut down. You shouldn't continue investing on them. So, and I already took a decision on one. So it's completely shut down. And if it is transformable into a digital form of it, if it's going to be restructured to go digital, that would be, I have done that with another one that it has posts offline and online. So I shut down for good the offline, and I'm focusing now to migrate everything to go offline. We do have companies that used to be working on B2B, on B2C business model. So B2C is a lot of investment needed for reaching the end customer. So there are a lot of companies now are struggling and would like to go to online. So their business model shifted to be a B2B, and then the others have the money to reach the customer, and already they have their customers. So that kind of model works well. So if I don't have such a startup that I would negotiate with their customers. Actually, there is one I'm helping to negotiate with one of their clients to take a stake. It's going to be a sort of convertible note. They would like to build similar setup. So instead of building, why don't you make like a bridge loan in the form of a convertible note? At a certain floor, you can exercise. So that kind of instruments you can use with the startups. Merging, if you have inside your portfolio startups that are doing similar activities, but they are having their own, everyone have his own unique selling points. If there are two payment gateways, for example, one of them is the catering for fraud and the other one is catering the tokenization. So merging them together and having one setup strong that can serve both customers. So there are a lot of activities that you can do as it depends on your expertise. And this is very important when we say about the angel investor, he has a legacy, he has an expertise, he has the knowledge. So he knows how to restructure, it's like an art when you are painting. So you change the color, you change the mode, you change the waves when you are moving your brush. So this is the way that you need to look into your portfolio today. Get out from your mind what is happening outside. Try to help. Now focus how to help, because those startups having another human part, which is their families, they have to tackle this. So this part is very important to tackle. Even if you shut down a startup, you can take the same talents, that good talents, and you put them in the successful startup. So that kind of thinking would be importantly happening now from any angel investor that is looking into their portfolio. Also, extra investments I'm holding. So there is no extra investments going to happen until we get the existing ones sustain and move forward.
Okay, that's a very interesting point and quite important. No extra investments until you get hold of and control of your portfolio and you know exactly what is happening.
Exactly, because this extra investments, the first startup would like to have it is the one that you are having, because you know them. You already been working with them. You know their business model. You know all their weak points. So this investment is good to have it for them first. If you have an access that this year you are putting like 5 startups you would like to invest new, if you can support 3 and you have an access for 2, you can't have these 2 with the new business sector or whatever. But the priority is for your portfolio, not to go just look into the outside. So start with the big fish under your leg.
Great.
Looking to the ones inside the ocean.
That makes sense with the results of the research that Nasdaq has done. That actually the angel investors and VCs mentioned that of the present money, they will only execute about 30% for new investments. They are keeping money behind for the present portfolio, not just to survive the lockdown or the Corona season, but actually to look at the portfolio for the next year or 2. Liquidity is going to be the most important issue, and looking at new projects. I don't know about yourselves, but I've been working harder now than I ever worked when I was able to get out to the office and meetings and traveling and coffee breaks and everything. And now it's like one after the other. WhatsApp never stops. There is overdrive on webinars. It's like webinar after webinar. Everybody's always waiting for you for another Zoom or Skype session, and you can get an overdrive. And the startups know that you are locked down in your house, and they know that you will be in front of your computer, and they'll be asking you for a pitch. These virtual pitches that are also, I'm going into overdrive. I mean, they could be, I know some of you is already getting too late at night, but it's like, okay, can we talk tonight at 8, 9, 10? Almost the respect of the working day has gone out of the window. It's the things that we never planned that we are having to deal with now. You almost feel bad with yourself when you say to somebody, not that day, because you almost think, well, what are you doing at 8 o'clock in the morning? What are you doing at 7? What are you doing at 10 o'clock at night? You know, you're not going to go anywhere. You're not flying anywhere. You're not traveling
Exactly.
anywhere.
That's what everybody
No
feeling
excuses.
that we are just sitting at home.
Yes.
Actually, we have business that we are taking care of. We are having portfolios that we are taking care of. We are involved in other webinars. We are trying, also we have a family that we are taking care of. So there are a lot of stuff that happens. It used to be when you go to a conference, you are off your business. So you are off your duty, both family or current duties. Now, both of them with the conferences, with webinars all together, dragging all your time, and the time difference is also an issue. So all the webinars are happening based on the place. Yesterday before, I was having one from New York, and it was like very late night. It was midnight in Kuwait time. So for them, it was early in the morning, afternoon. So we've been exhausted, actually. I believe that it's more intense because your mind is keep continuously thinking what's going to happen. And also at the same time, what I'm going to do. And the third thing, how to coexist with what is happening. So
what does everybody else think about this new virtual pitches? Are we just thinking that they fill in the agenda? Are we thinking that they just there, and so we put in more meetings to feel productive because we are home? Because let's think about it. It's like we as humans, we're meant to be active all the time. So are we not? Lucy, what do you think about this virtual?
Actually, hey, listen, Israel, I am going to take the view of the founders, right? I'm going to say, they're doing what we always tell them to do, right? They're hustling. They're like, I've got a captured audience. We've got to come up with a way to get funding. And as you know, most of the virtual pitches are being put on by organizations like ours. We're trying to figure out how we can still help our portfolio companies, our companies that we've perhaps promised to take a look at, find funding in this climate. So I'm all for the virtual pitches, and there's some very, very interesting ones that I'll be a part of in the coming few weeks. But I'm also finding that there's a lot of advice that's really valuable advice, like given by angel networks and VCs to their to companies right now. And it might be a good idea, knowing that we're all trapped at home. I always say, talk and initiate a conversation with someone that would potentially fund you before you need the money. So this is a good time to do soft touch and start talking to people. Obviously, be mindful of their schedule, but certainly don't hesitate to reach out, and then be respectful of any investor's time.
I think I like that terminology. Be mindful and soft touch approach, which it means you're not scaring the investor away. You're actually you're having that connection, which I think is what a lot of the startups, entrepreneurs miss out on, because
Yes.
you get attacked to always, okay, so are you going to invest? Or once we pitch, when do you take a decision? Is very difficult, especially now when you are being also open your schedule to have these meetings. How is your virtual pitching sessions going, Fabrice, for IBAN and for your network in a specific?
Yes, but actually, I agree with what was said before. I think people believe, yes, you are in lockdown, so you have more time. To be honest, I'm super busy, hopefully. Now I have the chance to have also, I'm an entrepreneur, and I have a business that fortunately is not suffering from the COVID. So we have a lot of work. And yes, in addition to this, yes, there are, let's say, all the activities as a business angel. And you are right, there are a lot of webinars because everyone is now turning to the webinar. So there are, I think that I counted that with all the lockdown and probably with next week too, it will be about 40 webinars that I would have attended. So it's just huge. Now, of course, there are some of good quality and some of less quality. Regarding the virtual pitches, to be honest, it doesn't change too much for me because personally, I'm not limited to invest locally in Luxembourg. I'm looking internationally. So I've been often in touch with companies that are in US or other parts of Europe. And and they just pitch, let's say we do a Zoom and they make their pitch. So where it's different is, yes, for the local companies, because the local companies, we were saying, okay, let's grab a coffee and we can just be acquainted, etc. I think this we are missing. And for example, I had a discussion recently with some investor colleagues, and they were saying that it's difficult to invest in a new company if you cannot meet, let's say, the founders physically, because it's true that I think humans are social, let's say, animals, and we need to have these contacts. And virtually, I think we can do a lot of things for sure. But at some point, when you have to make the final decision to invest, I think it's complicated if it's all virtually. I already did, but I was, let's say, more a follow-up investor, following some orders, and I was trusting, let's say, their judgment. Now, if you are more in a leading seat, I think that it's very complicated if you cannot really have a face-to-face discussion with the founders. So it's why I think that most of the investment decisions will be mainly after the lockdown, when people will be able to reconnect, let's say, face-to-face. Because, virtually, probably, yes, if you are part of a group, and maybe if some people know well, let's say, the founders, then it may work. But otherwise, I think personally that it's a bit complicated.
Nikhil, what do you think of the webinar overdrive and the pitching sessions? And you also got an accelerator, which means loads of the entrepreneurs will be looking for you to connect them to your angel network and your VCs. That you're also a member of a committee of the WBAF fund. So has your overdrive, what tips have you got for angel investors when they're doing this virtual pitching?
So I'll tell you my personal tragic story. For the last 2 days, I have a sore throat. And this is not because of the virus, because of excessive speaking. And my ear and my elbow, I will have a tennis elbow soon because I am holding my phone like this all the time. And I now have made a point, after a minute of speaking, I have to shift my phone here. And then after some time, I have to put my headphones, because if this COVID will not take away anything else, it will take away my throat and my ear. That is for sure. So I absolutely agree. There is an overdrive of webinars and pitching which is happening. So webinars are fine. We are certainly, I would look at more of a responsibility that there are people who are looking either up to us or we looking at to them to understand what is going on, because there is so much confusion, so much of uncertainty in the market that requires, and that's the only human connection that is available today. Phones, WhatsApp, Facebook, or webinars. Otherwise, there is no possibility of knowing what is going on. If today there are hundreds of people who have joined us, if they have not joined us and if we are not speaking to each other, we would have never understood, or the kind of hope that we are wanting would not come. That is one way I will put at it. Second is regarding the people who are coming to pitch us up. So I am, as a CEO of an incubator, I receive pitching and I give pitches to raise money. for my startups, and as well as the grants which is coming in on a daily basis. So I'm speaking to chairmen of very large corporations, CEOs. At the same time, the companies are pitching to me. So if I want to look at from the both the perspective, from my own perspective as well as the companies which are putting up, so there are two type of companies which are approaching us now. The one who are absolutely desperate. They are looking for money, otherwise they will lock down, or they will not have, they don't have any money to pay the salaries. They are desperate to raise money, whatever it takes. The second ones are actually come with the radical solutions. I would say disruptive companies. Even this stage, somebody is able to come up and pitch a new idea to you. My suggestion to my fellow angel investor is that please listen to him. He may be coming with a disruptive idea which nobody else is listening, because somebody has to be absolute crazy to come up with an idea and looking at, because everybody is now, as a typical corporate executive or as a typical middle level executive working in a big company, what you will say, okay, my salary is coming, I'll sit down, relax. But it's an entrepreneur at this stage, he is continuously thinking and reaching out to the new investors and talk to them. So either desperation or a disruption. Desperation and disruption are the two key words which I would say, which are driving these entrepreneurs. And at the same time, I look at my own story. When I am desperate to look for money for the companies which are there in the incubator, that is one way. But there are disruptive technologies which are coming in. And when I speak to these chairmen and the CEOs of the big corporation, and I tell them only one thing: kindly listen to me for 10 minutes. If you don't like my talking to you, then you can block my numbers. Of course, a lot of people, just because of they know us, they know our institution, they pick up the phone, they respond. But most of them come back and the conversation goes on. So you, as an investor, you need to assess that whom you want to listen. And if somebody is doing desperation or disruption, I think there is a responsibility exists from both the investor side, at least to listen them out, rather than like, as a counselor or as a friend or as a guide or as an investor, we need to listen to them and provide them that guidance.
Great. Before we go into the Q&A session, I will ask each one of you to give me your thoughts on the following. What are your continuity plans that you have seen within your environment, especially for the new industries that are, well, non-new industries, but the new tendencies, where is the investments are going to be done? Please, I know all of you are going to say health, and that's all I hear from everybody, and I'm sure you hear it is health, health, health. But come on, within the health industry, there are different sectors. There is research and development, so you come in too early, takes too long. Vaccine to develop, for example, yeah, it's great. And right now, because we got it in our face, everybody is looking at health, vaccine, etc. But within the health industry, I'm sure you have your preferences, and where you can tell us, we as and the audience of investors that are there, where would you looking at to invest your portfolio now? Are the percentages changing? And very quickly, please, because we need to make space for the Q&A. And remember, that last year and 2 years ago and 3 years ago, we were talking about fintech and how crazy it was, and everybody wants, well, my company's fintech and the valuation goes up. Well, my company is health and the valuation goes up. So tell me very quickly, what are your contingency plans and what industries you think are going to be key from now on? Lucy, please.
I'm going to say, yes, health, but I'll give you one very quick example of one that we're invested in. It's actually a Turkish and American company. It's called Vivu. And essentially, it's a urinary strip. And by looking at the results with an app on your phone, it will tell you what your body needs. Maybe you're low in magnesium, whatever. And then in time, they're going to be able to work with companies like Starbucks. You'll be able to go into Starbucks and they'll tell you, okay, you're low in this, so you should order the green tea latte or something. So a fabulous company. So that's a very specific example. But I will say in general, I think what I foresee in the future, and I think this is one of the questions coming up from one of our audience members, is social impact. So even though, you know, I'm all about money, I'm all about making profits, because we invest in, I have one company that invests in female founded startups. They're all for-profit companies, but many of them have social impact. So whether that's the one that I just told you about that has obviously impact for our health, or whether it's edutech, or whether it's fintech where it's helping the unbanked make remittances back home, because of what's happened, there's going to be more of a focus on companies that make the world a better place, whether that's tech for good or just general social impact.
Fabrice.
Yes, I think that you know, all the sectors that that are online, we know that it was already a mega trend, and I think it's just accelerating because of the COVID. And people realize how easy it is when we see, let's say, the boom that Amazon, let's say, has today, or Alibaba. Yeah, I think they were already on the right side of history, and it's just accelerating. So in my opinion, everything which is linked to online entertainment, online education, online delivery, online health, of course, but also enterprise software, to try to help companies, for example, with remote workers, etc. Everything which is linked to automation. I think all these sectors are going to really boom in the next years. And there are good opportunities for investors. I'm also a space investor, so I would like to also discuss about space. You know, space depends 25% of national agencies, so they are much less affected by crisis. And I think we will need more and more space. Why? Because, you know, there are Earth observation data, telecommunication. So for many of these online services, you just need space data. So I think space will continue to really increase in the next years. And I think space is a good opportunity for investors too. Now, there are some.
Can you give us an example of maybe with some startup that you have in your portfolio?
But there is a company which is called ICEYE. They do a small satellite with SAR. Is a specific technology, and it's really a company that is really going very well. And now they and it's what I explained before. You need to try to see if you cannot redeploy for specific purposes, for example, for the COVID. And it's what they did. They did something specially to help in the healthcare. I don't know exactly what they did, but I know that they did something very interesting in that respect. So I think, yes, but you know, there are some companies, for example, to try to have epidemiological maps, for example, thanks to Earth observation. So this is, of course, very interesting for pandemics. Now there are some sectors that are suffering, like events, transportation, travel, sport, hospitality, tourism. I think if an entrepreneur is coming with a nice disruptive business model in that sector, that may be a good opportunity too. So I will not, let's say, abandon completely these sectors, because there are probably ways, and probably it's the right time to somehow disrupt these sectors that during years they believe that they were, let's say, just going crazy, and maybe now there are newcomers that maybe will come with some disruptive ideas. So I think this will be interesting to follow up in the next months and next years.
Mohammed, what are you looking at on the going forward with your portfolio? What industries? Where do you see them being more interested and most disruptive? To be able, if you had to give us an advice of where to go and what disruption to look for.
As I mentioned before, that DLT, distributed ledgers is going to be big, because today there are a lot of scams on the news talking about the vaccine that is good, the medication that is good. You need to verify this, and you need to get it from the right sources. So traceability of the DLT technology is going to be a very important issue on the future. So DLT is helping with that. Also, traceability of the money that is being used. So far, a lot of laundering of money is happening, and a lot of black markets is happening. So to hit markets and economies of some countries that already suffering, in order to benefit, to have other benefits. So DLT and crypto would be crypto in terms of security. It would be a sufficient solution, and any startup in that portfolio would be interesting. Digital custody is going to be huge business, because today everybody is panicked and they don't know what to do with their money. So tokenizing them and storing them inside digital custodies, would be another big thing that is coming. This is more into the new fintech. It's not a fintech; it's actually the entire financial industry disruption. So I call it the FinDis, the financial disruption, and it's gonna hit heavily on the economy. Lots of problems with the stocks, lots of problems of the banks themselves. There are some countries I was hearing. I don't want to mention the country name. They said if the private bank that you are putting in it, whatever number, you will end up getting only from the central bank 100K out of it. So if you are putting a 1 million, they don't care about the 1 million, they will give you 100K. So this kind of panic that private banks being managed in a totally different way, commercial banks. So this is all need to be evaluated. Any technology would be supporting that kind of risk mitigation for the financial, very important pillar inside the economy, which is the financial sector, would be an interesting to look at. Edutech. So today what is happening is just very primitive ways. Zoom is opening classes. Google, they just get Hangout and Meet integrated together. Microsoft, they use their Teams for office communication. So there is no proper edutech platform that can have the curriculum, that can have the parents, that can have the academy members and students all in collaborative way with the test exams presented online. And so that would be very interesting to look at, especially that more than 181 universities being shut down during that pandemic. So, and there are more than that in the school space. And I believe the cost that being in campus education would be looked at. So why don't we have online? Why I need? This is also going to be important for the tools like that, what we are using. Today, when I go to Istanbul, or I go to Cairo, or I go to even to Los Angeles to do 4 meetings a day, it was like I'm lucky. So because of the traffic. Now with such tools, why I need to move myself from the hotel, or I can do everything online. So if I have the proper tools to present my presentation and highlight, have a whiteboard that I can draw and fully interactive, that would be an interesting, and would be a really important tools that will be coming for startups to use a lot instead of moving and putting fees there. So optimization is gonna be the futuristic. I don't say cutting cost or no, it's gonna be optimization. The things that can be done online is gonna be done online, and it will continue to be online. In healthcare, I see telemedicine. Telemedicine is really important. We are investing now in telemedicine. So virtual visits for doctors, trying to get the remote health devices. We are in touch with a company from New York. They have done an interesting device that can do all the readings, and it can check your heart or your breath or your SpO2 inside or your temperature, and communicate it into the cloud, and they can the doctor cloud is coming and assessing on that. So this is a very important space that now is being also looked at. We are in genome. Genome is going to be huge, the biotech. So this, like what Lucy said about the urine, that instead of the urine, actually we are using the saliva. So your saliva is easier to ship than the urine itself. And it goes to the DNA, and it comes with a list of all the diseases that you are having a tendency to, or the kind of problems that you can heal with the nutrition program or an exercising plan. So there are a lot of spaces. In our country, food is important. So we feel food tech and bionic farms is going to be one of the important fields in the future. That is all based on water and soilless, no soils. So farming at home and making what you need. So in the lockdown, you cannot go and buy these groceries, or you go and you find that it's finished. So planting at home, I believe this is South Korea is investing a lot in that space. And there are a lot of sectors that are emerging and booming in that. So, and I believe they are all opportunities to look at.
Yeah, great. I recommend you to have a look at the chat. There are great comments there, and the questions that come to the board. And I'm trying to make
Israel. Yeah, I just remember Israel.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Fabrice. I just remember for ISI, actually, so they help track and count the cruise ships impacted by the COVID with their special satellite technology. So this is very interesting.
Yeah. Great. Nikhil, did you see some of the questions there? They're asking between the crossover between materials like nanotechnology, biotech, material science. Rodrigo Villar is mentioning that, and also saying, apart from Fabrice, is any of you involved in the space industry? That's one thing. And another thing, very quickly, and please jump in as you like, because we are going into the last 15 minutes. So I want to comment from one of them about the crossover between the different technologies. How do you see it? It's starting with Nikhil. And then if somebody else wants to take the other question, which is, how do we see space, the space of the real estate? You know, apparently the angel investors, especially in developing economies, have the majority of their portfolio invested in real estate, bricks and mortar, and passive investment. So I know some of you are in developed markets where you are the other way around. You know, you have higher risks taken. How do you see the real estate going on? And then also a question from our friend Miguel Martin for one of you, which will be what's happening with cross-border, right? Mostly business angel networks were mostly based on location criteria, and I think that's true to developed economies, because traditionally, especially in the Europe and US, Europe not so much, but the US for this geographical size, they were very local. Cross-border for them is one state to another, and that's the reality of it. That's what the numbers say. And developing economies, we are more into cross-border. This is, you can tell by members of WBAF that the cross-border investment is very, very important. So there are three things there. Please pick and choose where you want to make a comment. I'll open the microphone with Nikhil.
So I would talk about the space from the other side, not from the space at the top, but the space at the bottom, the space where we live in. I think the companies should also look at suddenly there is a change in space of where we live and work. So there will be changes coming in. If, let's say, imagine a situation, the lockdown is over for just for a week, where you are allowed to order, and there is a predetermined, there's a pre-announcement going in that again the lockdown is coming after a week, but for a week you need to store things and you need to find out mechanism to start working from home. Your space at the home will change dramatically. So people are looking for avenues, methods, products, and resources so that they can realign their space at home. The space about the office will also change. At the real estate, which you mentioned about the real estate, the commercial space will move into a different direction. In the countries like India, where very large population still is under the poverty line, where the spaces are a challenge. In fact, just to share with you, 75% of Indians who are there who cannot do the social distancing because they either live in one room or below. So that's a challenge which we'll face in countries in Africa, in Asia, and even in South America. So the space, even at the ground level, we need to understand, and there will be changes happening. So the furniture companies, the real estate companies, all will have an opportunity to relook at that space. Now, coming back to the comment which is made by Muhammad regarding the fintech, now we are hearing the stories that shall we hand over a credit card to somebody? Shall we hand over the cash to somebody? Will the cash will have a COVID stuck on it or a virus stuck on the cash? So how do you again motivate millions and billions of people to move from hard currency to the plastic money to all towards digitalization of the money? So the digitization, the fintech space will emerge greatly. So I think the companies and ideas which will come in that space too. So scope do exist. In the beginning, I have said like we have to start looking at the lives and livelihood and the realignment of the business. That is what we are moving towards.
Right. Anybody else wants to take one of the other points?
Actually, I just wanted to jump. Okay, Fabrice.
No, go.
I was just going to jump in because I'm conscious that we also wanted to provide some insight about perhaps a changing landscape for VCs and angel investors after COVID. And I think there was already a move towards a change because the way the system is set up right now, and I'm talking mainly, this is very specific to like Silicon Valley, there was always just a focus on perhaps the top 1% of how well a portfolio is performing. But honestly, 99% of entrepreneurs are slow and steady, right? Not everyone's going to be a unicorn. Not everyone's going to reach that. And unfortunately, I think we're doing a disservice to that 99%. And so we talked about convertible notes. And so as an investor, I've done convertible notes, I've done safes, but I'm also advocating that perhaps VCs, investors should think about alternative ways of financing, not just always looking at equity front and center, but perhaps a blend of equity and annual recurring revenue. There's a lot of really interesting pieces of literature out there that's saying that we need to really relook the whole investing model. And we need to make sure we're lifting up the rest of the 99% of entrepreneurs out there. So I wanted to just make sure I mentioned that.
That's an amazing point, Lucy. That's a great point because as we have discussed before in other meetings and in other panels, we cannot continue with the venture capital industry and the angel investment industry investing the same way that it was done 80 years ago. The model hasn't changed, and that's terrible because we asked entrepreneurs to be disruptive and generate, but we're still investing with the same conditions. So that's a great point. Please, Mohammed, ahead. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah, I believe I'm not gonna add more. All my colleagues give all the hello.
Yeah.
I'm gonna disconnect. Okay. So they talked about the model, they talked about the industry. I believe real estate is going to be totally different, especially the co-working spaces. Co-working spaces with this social distancing is going to be hard. So working from home is going to be more emphasized. So looking into the virtual accelerators that offering the complete facilities that they are getting inside the incubator, that would be the opportunity now. How to make virtual incubators and accelerators and give the same mentoring and coaching service that they've been getting, and the pitching opportunity that they've been doing inside their incubator, or getting those mentors from overseas. I believe this is, if it happens inside an online collaborative platform, is going to be more helpful. The new substance, I believe this is an interesting field that's now covered. This COVID-19 is attaching to the metals and to the services that are more from metal. If you have a nanotechnology that is doing self-cleaning and self-sanitizing, this would be another interesting opportunity. Instead of having all these hygienes, materials and sanitizers to be all the time spreaded, so you just create the material and it will be self-cleaning all the time. So pandemic is not going to be the first one. I believe there are a lot coming. There are others that already exist, and we don't know. This N1H1, which is the swine flu, it reached 1 billion infection. So it's there, but it's hidden somewhere. The only thing is that the spreading is very, very low. It's not like the COVID-19 spreading. So I believe nanotechnology, new substance is gonna play a big role. This is one of the questions into that, and they can solve a lot of problems that they are facing today from the lockdown. And investing in such startups would be a great opportunity to expedite the solution to come. In biotech vaccines, everybody's claiming they have a vaccine. Everybody's saying that hydroxychloroquine, that is a malaria medication, would be the solution. I believe that looking into the vaccination as a whole, and by knowing what we have done during our childhood from vaccines and how we can increase that to be a kind of ongoing regime, this would be another opportunity that needs to look at. So you don't need to every time look into doing a new vaccination.
I'd like to ask you before we finish, because we got like 5 minutes. Whom of you are at this moment in time doing and looking at the cross-border investment being part of your portfolio? Maybe already is, but there will be investors in the audience that are welcome to join us, of course, in the WBAF fund, which is one of the best ways to convert yourself into an angel investor cross-border. But what cross-border you have right now in your portfolio, or are you looking at doing it? And maybe Fabrice, you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think in terms of cross-border investment, the advice that I would say is avoid to do it alone. Do it with some local investors. So maybe you can try to connect with some local business angel network, maybe a VC that works also with business angels, maybe, or any local association. It can be a local accelerator, maybe, that is looking for investors. But you need some local point. I think it's very complicated to do it by yourself, because what I said, unless, let's say, you can travel, you can meet the founders, etc. But otherwise, I think it's going to be very complicated. And to have some local point, I think, will be key in terms of cross-border. So I think it's the best way to evaluate some deals. For example, during 2 years, I was part of FIBAN, the Finnish Business Angel Network. And yeah, thanks to them, yeah, they do all the due diligence, the deal flow, etc. I think that's much easier than if you have to do it yourself.
Great, thank you. Well, we got the last 3 minutes, and I will now ask you to give us your closing remark that as a bit of advice, but so short that we could include it into a tweet, so that way we can stick to the times, and then we can come to a close. So if you, Nikhil, you're ready, please give us your tweet.
Yeah, my tweet for today would be: disruption and desperation are the mantra for success in this current situation.
Great. Mohammed?
Being positive, looking into the situation as an opportunity for the startups. They should go into their clients. They should look into their clients that they've been buying from them a lot of services and go and conclude a deal with them. They have to look into next time they are going to rounds, they have to look into smart money, because if their current angel investors, they are doing nothing for them, they should get rid of them.
Fabrice?
Yeah, I would say, and also to answer a previous question, look at maybe some convergence of different technologies. So companies that tackle big problems, that have a great idea to tackle big problems, and by using a convergence of different technologies, I think definitely these are the champions of the future. So I will definitely invest in this kind of companies.
Lucy?
And my tweet would be to pivot, and this as advice to both founders and investors. So obviously, currently, if you're looking at your current business model, you should definitely act fast. No one's going to ever regret having to act fast right now in this climate, and cash flow is really important. And then when we come out of this, how can we be better investors? So not only just the smart money, but what other vehicles, what other ways can we be looking at funding rather than just taking all equity?
Great. I don't know if I will put a last call out to our audience, international audience, if there is one or two last questions that they feel we should answer for them. Whilst they type, I will just make a summary. I mean, we have some great points that were discussed. Some of the takeaways, financial disruption, one of the things that has to be looked into, moving from fintech into financial disruption, sticking with disruption and desperation, how to analyze when somebody's disruptive or somebody's desperate in the portfolio, and what new projects are going to be, the concept, the technologies, how they're going to consolidate and be crossover between technologies that will generate the new startups. Pivot your portfolio, your startups. If you're an entrepreneur, some of the questions were, what should an entrepreneur do right now in the crisis? And is pivot. Read it quick, read it strategically. Something that is also a takeaway from this conversation is keep the cash moving. That will generate liquidity in the market, and also be creative about how you invest. Be fair. Put maybe a bridging loan, a convertible note to the future, because we don't know what the future will look like. So if you invest in certain valuations right now, you don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. So these convertible documents are very important. Look after your portfolio right now. Look at some of the casualties that are going to happen. Don't put good money after bad money. Take great decisions. Cross-border, always with somebody else, somebody local, very important. Somebody's asking if hydrocarbon is dead. Does any of my panelists have any views there?
I think we have achieved already the turning point, because renewable energies are already cheaper than hydrocarbons. So I think, yeah, nobody wants really to admit, but I think it's the reality. So.
Right. And I think I just would like another opinion on the real estate industry, the construction industry. I saw it there 3 times appeared on the on the chat. Disruption, technology to construction. Any of you want to add something there?
Just very quickly, and obviously Dubai, it's construction is very important to us. There's some fabulous, again, not just on the social impact space, but there's a fabulous company. There's more than one doing the same thing where they're looking at the safety of construction workers, right? So it's a helmet that tracks every construction worker, and it also tells you if they're low on water, if they're dizzy, if they've fallen. So there's a lot that can be done to disrupt the construction space. And I honestly do think there is a huge emphasis on care of construction workers. So yeah, so that's a particular area of interest.
Great. And well, with that, we pretty much have come to the end of our panel. I think it has been, well, I have really enjoyed myself. I hope the audience has done it. If they didn't enjoy it, well, too bad, because we did. I hope you took time to go and get a drink, and if we're being too bored, but I'm sure we weren't. Thank you very much to my great panelists, Lucy, Fabrice, Mohammed, Nikhil. It has been absolutely fantastic. I think there is loads of takeaways. You can approach the panelists directly. There might be an overdrive on webinars, but you can go and pitch. You can go and do and ask them, if they're co-investing. As I said, WBAF webinars are being put up by this worldwide organization that is part of an alliance with the G20 for financial inclusion and for early stage investment. We are very much pro-entrepreneurs, pro-angel investors, pro-VCs who are smart. WBAF has its own investment fund that does cross-border investment. So if you're an angel investor and want to do cross-border investment with WBAF fund, you're more than welcome to get in touch with us. Mariam is on the chat, send her a message, and we will get back to you. You could be part of these webinars as well. If you have some great interest to put in, we will welcome you. So Mariam, thank you for being in the background and helping us to do this. I don't know if you'd like to close with something.
Thank you all. I enjoyed a lot. Thank you so much. I think it was very productive and fruitful. It was very useful for me. Thank you all. And I think really the participation of our attendees was perfect, and all of them are thanking you. So that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Great.
Maria.
Have a fantastic weekend. Happy Ramadan.
Thank you, Israel, for moderating the panel.
Oh no, it's fabulous summary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.